Hey students, welcome back to BBA Simplified by Dr. Vinky Sharma. We are finishing our Organizational Behaviour Marathon class today. Continuing with Unit 5, that is Management of Change. This chapter explains how organizations deal with change, why people resist change, what organizational development is, and how culture, power, politics, and quality of work life shape organizational behavior. We will also learn the latest trends and advances in OB that modern companies follow today. So, let us begin with part A, that is Introduction to Change. What is organizational change? Organizational change means any alteration in people, structure, technology, or process of an organization. Change is continuous and inevitable. These are the two things that you need to remember all the time. That one, change is continuous, and two, that change is inevitable. When I say continuous, that means change हमेशा होता रहता है. As and when we move ahead, there is a need to bring in the change. And when I say inevitable, here inevitable means जिसको आप ignore नहीं कर सकते. It is liable to happen. So why change happens? It happens due to both internal and external forces. Even if we see that there are no internal forces which are letting us to bring in the change, but yet we have to bring in the change due to external forces, because these external forces are not in our hand. There is a need that organizations must change to survive, grow, and stay competitive. If the organizations would not change, would not bring the change and adapt themselves according to the changes coming up, they will not be able to survive for a longer time in the competition. For example, when a college introduces online classes, or maybe a company shifts from manual to digital billing, it is actually undergoing the organizational change. So bringing in the digital transformations, bringing in new technologies, restructuring the organization, getting into a merger, they are all the examples of organizational changes. There are certain forces that drive change that we had also talked in the last slide. These organizational changes, why? Because of two forces. One is the internal force, like leadership change, new strategy comes up, there is a lot of employee turnover, or maybe performance issues are coming up. So they all come under internal forces. Then there are external forces like competition, new technology, customer preferences, government rule, and globalization. So these internal and external forces drives the change. So they becomes the drivers for which the organizations need to adapt and change themselves. How can we all forget about COVID-19? It has brought a lot of changes. It has forced businesses worldwide to shift from the manual working to work from home or external changes. So these are the drivers that brings in the change. Coming on to part B, that is organizational development. Here we'll understand that what is the meaning of OD, what are the different characteristics of OD, and what are the techniques or interventions that comes under OD. Organizational development, or commonly known as OD, it is a planned long-term effort to improve organizational effectiveness and employee well-being. So what is organizational development? There is a requirement that organization should develop, and it should develop in a planned manner, in a systematic manner, so that ultimately the organizational effectiveness can be improved. Organizational effectiveness focuses on people, values, culture, and long-term improvement. It uses behavioral science techniques to change the attitude of the employees, the value system of the organization, and the organizational culture itself. Let's see what are the different features or characteristics of organizational development. It includes long-term effort. We say that if we need to develop the organization, we need to put on a long-term effort in a systematic manner. So it has to be systematic, it has to be planned. It is always based on human values like trust and participation. We focus on team building, on collaboration. It uses scientific and behavioral techniques. So OD is not a one-day task, it is a continuous process. Now let's see what are the OD interventions or different techniques by which OD is applicable or is possible. OD uses several interventions. For example, there is sensitivity training, or we also call it as T group. It helps employees understand themselves and their impact on others. They first try and understand that what are their way of working and how their way of working is impacting others, maybe their colleagues, maybe their subordinates, or maybe their superiors. For example, training employees to avoid harsh tones or improve listening skills, right? And then comes team building. So team building improves trust, communication and coordination among the team members. There are another intervention like process consultation. An OD expert helps identify communication gaps and misunderstandings. Then when we try and understand what is survey feedback, we say that employees fill surveys and the results guide the improvements. On the basis of the feedback surveys, whatever improvements are required, those improvements are taken care of. Then is management by objective or MBO. Here managers and employees, they set the goals together and they start working onto it. Then there is a grit training, right, in which the training is given to the employees so that they can bring in the efficiency and effectiveness into their working style. So these survey feedbacks are there to improve communication as well. There are sales targets. They may be set together jointly, so that comes under management by objective. So every quarter when the targets are set jointly by employees and the managers, so it is an example of an MBO. Let's now come and talk about resistance to change. Resistance means that why do people push themselves back when it comes on to accepting the change. So let's begin and understand what exactly it is. Resistance means opposition, fear or refusal to accept the change. People generally resist because change brings uncertainty. We'll understand that what are the causes of resistance. They can cause from individual or from the organizational reasons. Let's first look at the individual resistance or the reasons of an individual, that why do they resist to change. The very first one is fear of unknown. They do not understand what is coming up, so they fear of that unknown which is coming up, so they resist. They do not accept the change completely. Then is the habit. उनकी आदत ही होती है कि हमें कोई भी नया काम आएगा तो हमें नहीं करना है. Then there is lack of trust. They don't trust onto the new system. They believe that whatever we have been doing was the most right pattern of doing a thing. There could be economic concerns और इकोनॉमिक इनसिक्योरिटीज. क्या होगा अगर चेंज आने के बाद कुछ इनसिक्योरिटी आई? व्हाट इफ वी आर नॉट एबल टू cope up with the changes? So there is also fear of economic concerns. Then is misunderstanding. That may happen due to poor communication. They do not understand that what exactly is coming up. For example, a worker may fear losing his job after the automation. He feels that now the automation has come, so I am no more required. So he may have a fear of losing his job as well. Moving on to organizational reasons. The first one is the structural inertia or the rigid structure of the organization that leads employees to resist the change. Then is strong existing cultures, the group norms, the limited resources with which the people are working, the threat to power or authority or the status that they are currently holding. The overall culture of the organization can also create a threat and resistance to change. For example, a manager may resist change because it reduces his authority. He believes that, let's take an example of automation only. He believes that automation would come up, so then people will get the instructions automatically. I, as a manager, may not be required to give the instructions there. Then the question comes that how a manager should overcome these resistance. So for that, manager can use various techniques like education and communication. A manager needs to educate and communicate with the employees. Tell them that why this change is coming up, what will be the advantages of those changes, and how the people would actually upgrade with the change that is coming up. So a manager needs to communicate with the employees. Let the employees participate and involve into the new system that is coming up. Then there is a requirement to facilitate the training programs and provide the support to the employees so that they can accommodate with the change that is introduced in the organization. There is also a requirement to negotiate with the employees over the change that is coming up, so that they ultimately reach onto a win-win consensus. Sometimes a manager also needs to manipulate certain things. Let's say that a technology that is coming up is actually hard to understand and adopt, but a manager will have to manipulate, stating it that it is a very easy technology and everybody will be able to do it. So these manipulations or some smart acts are also required from the manager's side. There is a need to build the trust, and in extreme cases, coercions are the last resorts. Coercion is nothing but breaking the groups and letting them work individually. For example, installing new software, employees are trained and guided, and this reduces the fear of accepting the change. I hope this resistance to change is understood. We will now move on to the next part, wherein we'll see that what are the different approaches to managing these changes. We'll be talking about different models and the types of organizational changes. When we talk about the change model, there is one model which is given by Levin's 3-step model. This model talks about 3 things. First is unfreeze, then is change, and then refreeze. So Kurt Lewin proposed these 3 steps. He said in the first step, that is unfreezing, what we are doing is we are unlearning the old habits. We need to convince the employees that old processes were slow and inefficient, and so we need to unlearn them. Once this unfreezing or unlearning happens, then Lewin said we move on to the next step, that is introducing to the new processes, technologies or roles, right? So maybe if the organization is coming up to the digitalization, and let's say that there is a shift from manual attendance to digital attendance, so this change will happen in this stage. And then finally happens refreezing, which is making the new behavior permanent, right? For example, we may set some strict rules, so digital attendance becomes the routine for everybody, that if you will not do the digital attendance, you will be considered as absent maybe. Then there is another model which was given by Cotters. He had given 8 steps as compared to Levin's 3-step model. Cotters suggested deeper steps like creating urgency, right? We need to first create the urgency of the change that needs to come. For example, all the competitors had already adopted the change, and now is the time. If we will not actually adopt the change, we will have to close it down. So we need to establish the urgency, right? Then is forming the coalitions, form the groups, form a change team, form a coalition and start working on to adapting a change. Then create a vision that what we are doing, where we are going. Communication should be there among the team members. Keep communicating that what we are doing, why we are doing, and what are the benefits of it. Empower people to have their own innovations, have their own creative styles whenever it comes on to adapting a change. Then is generate a win-win culture. These wins are important because with these wins will only motivate the employees to adapt further. Then consolidate whatever we have done as of now and see that where we are moving on. And then finally, embed these change into the culture, institutionalize it, bring in that change, adapt that change permanently into the culture of the organization. This is the model that is widely used in companies whenever especially they are undergoing a big transformations, for example mergers, or maybe in case of restructuring. We'll now see that what are the different types of organizational changes. These organizational changes talks about different changes that or different types of changes that may occur in the organization. The first change is the structural change. For example, any organization is going under a change in the structure of the organization. Maybe some hierarchies are introduced or maybe some hierarchies are removed permanently. There may be changes in the department, there may be changes in the reporting of one department to the other department. That is called as structural change. Next is the technological change. Whenever we bring in a new change which is related to the technology, a new software is adapted, a new technology that comes under the category of technological change. The next change is a people-centric change. We see that there is a requirement to train the employees so that they change their attitude, they change their behavior towards the organization and achievement of the organizational goals. So in this case, some people-centric training programs are introduced. Next is a strategy change. Let's say that the organization is bringing a change in its entire strategy, vision, mission, and so this is called as strategy change. Next is the cultural change. This generally happens with the change in the whenever we see a change in the top positions. So these top positions are ultimately responsible for bringing the overall cultural change in the organization. So these are the different types of changes that may occur in any of the organization. Moving on to part E, that is organizational effectiveness. Why effectiveness in the organization is important. Okay, organizational effectiveness. The meaning of effectiveness means achieving the goals efficiently, using minimum resources while maintaining employee satisfaction. So whenever we are seeing that our employees are able to achieve the goals efficiently and are using the resources optimally, it is said that organizational effectiveness is achieved. There are different measures that help us to see the level of effectiveness in the organization. The very first measure is productivity. If the productivity of an organization is on a higher side, it is said that the effectiveness is again on a higher side. How much the profitability the organization is generating, how much satisfied the employees of the organization are, how well they are able to adapt to the environment, how much innovation is present in the organization, and how much goal is attained by the employees while using the minimum resources. So these factors define the effectiveness in the organization. There are different models of measuring the effectiveness. Before we understand the models, we also need to understand that any company that increases sales while it is reducing its cost, right? So what the company is doing, it is actually on the verge of improving its effectiveness. There are three major models of measuring the effectiveness in the organization. The very first model is a goal model. It focuses on the measurable targets. There are targets, so it focuses on how much the targets are achieved. The next model is a system model. It focuses on the adaptability of survival, this factor here. Then the last model is a strategic constituency model. This model focuses on satisfying the key stakeholders of any organization. So each organization chooses a model based on its purpose, that onto which are they focusing more. Are they goal focused, are they system focused, or are they strategy focused? The next topic that comes into this unit is on organizational culture. Again, one of the most important part of this unit, I would say. Let's understand what is organizational culture. It is a shared values, beliefs, behavioral norms, and symbolic practice that guide how people work together. It is like the personality of a company. When we say that what is the culture of the organization, we are actually talking about the personality of that company, how things are done here. For example, if we talk about Google, it always promotes creativity and flexibility, and so we say that Google has an innovative culture. The personality of Google is innovative. We now understand that there are different levels of the culture. We also call it as sheen. Culture exists on 3 levels. The first one is the artifacts. These artifacts are more visible. We are here talking about the visible symbols. For example, the dress code of the company, the office layout, the rituals of the company that organization follows. The next level could be on the basis of values, that are stated beliefs, right? For example, teamwork, customer focus, what is the value of that organization? And the last level is the assumption. It is actually deep rooted, it is hidden. So it is deeply rooted belief that people take for granted कि ये तो होना ही है. There are different types of culture. Culture can be an innovative, it can be bureaucratic, it can be a supportive culture, it can be competitive culture. So these different types of cultures define the personality of any organization. For example, if we talk about startups, these startups generally believe in innovative culture. And if on the other hand we talk about government offices, they are more bureaucratic in nature. After culture, we now move on to power and politics. What is the role of power in the organization? What is power actually? It is the ability to influence others. There are different sources from where the power comes. The first source is the legitimate power. It is based on the position. If any individual is holding a position, he will definitely have a power to direct others. The next power comes from reward system, the ability to give the benefits. The next source of power is coercive. This coercive power is the ability to punish, right? The other source is the expert power. It is based, of course, on the knowledge of an individual. जो भी organization में सबसे ज़्यादा knowledgeable होगा, चाहे वो position पे हो या ना हो, he will still holds a power that is called as expert power. कोई भी problem है, अरे A से पूछते हैं. He has all the answers. And the last type of power is referent power. It is based on the personality or the charisma of an individual. बंदे की पर्सनालिटी ही ऐसी होती है कि उसकी पर्सनालिटी में पावर रिफ्लेक्ट करती है, राइट? Let's understand this power through an example. Let's say that there is a senior professor who will have a legitimate power. Why? Because he is a senior professor, and will also have the expert power because that senior professor will be an expert of their own field. Another thing that comes in this unit is the organizational politics. Politics refers to activities used to influence decisions for personal benefits. Here, personal benefits comes into the picture. In case of power, we were still influencing the people, But in case of politics, here we are using that power so that we can influence the decision of an individual for my own benefit or for anybody's personal benefit. For example, forming the alliances, blaming others for anything wrong that had happened, withholding the information because I do not want others to get success, flattery, or maybe networking. These are all the examples of organizational politics. There are some common behaviors that are generally observed in the organization, which also shows that whether the employee is involved into political behavior or not. So when they form the coalition, when they blame others, when they withhold the information or when they impress the management by flattering them, they are all the behaviors that comes under the domain of political behavior. How to manage this organizational politics? There is a need that managers should control this harmful politics and needs to ensure that there is a transparency in the system, there is open communication, there are fair HR practices and policies. Whatever decisions are taken, they should be transparent. There has to be ethical leadership, and the decisions that are taken in the organization should always be based on merit. And when the employees feel that they are valued and heard, that is where the politics reduced naturally. Let's now move on to quality of work life, a very important aspect to understand, not only from the subject perspective but also from the personal perspective, I must say, because in the future you all will be going and joining the organization. So this quality of work life is something that should always and always matter to you. What is QWL? Quality of work life refers to the overall satisfaction that employee feels at work. This includes physical satisfaction, emotional satisfaction, as well as social well-being of an individual. There are certain components or elements of quality of work life. These key elements include safe working conditions, because while you are working in safe working conditions, you feel confident and comfortable. There should be fair salaries. There should be fair compensation. The work-life balance is also important. Work-life balance is nothing but when an employee is able to balance the work as well as personal life in a comfortable manner. Then we talk about autonomy or the growth opportunities, the job securities, the healthy relationship or healthy interpersonal relationship among the employees. We also talk about recognition here. So the more the employee is recognized and the better the facilities the employee would see in the organization, the better. These components of QWL also define the culture of any organization, right? So the better would be the quality of work life. For example, the companies, there are certain companies that offer flexible timing, or they offer some wellness programs. So why these programs or these options are provided by the companies? In order to improve the QWL of their employees. In case the QWL is not managed, then what are the ways that we can improve the quality of work life? By redesigning the job. Maybe the job that is being designed is not designed in a correct manner, so there is a requirement to redesign the job so the employee is able to balance both work as well as life. Then a participative management where employees are involved while taking the decision. They feel involved, they feel valued. Flexible working hours. The employee should be given the opportunity to change their shifts as per their requirements. There should be wellness programs organized by the organization. The leadership should be supportive. There should be some stress management programs. The communication in the organization should be transparent. There is also a need to have a family-friendly policies within the organization. So by these ways, we can actually improve the quality of work life and further improve the organizational culture. Here in this part I, we will be talking about the recent advances in the organizational behavior, a very important thing that everyone should know about. Recently, these OB trends have changed, and modern organizations have started using different practices. For example, emotional intelligence is one of the concepts that is coming up, wherein the employees' emotions are first evaluated and then they are given training on the basis of how intelligent they are when it comes on to controlling their emotions. Then positive organizational behavior is too much into focus these days. Engagement of the employees in the organization in different activities. The remote work culture has come up after COVID. The digital teams have now started working more as compared to the physical offices. The diversity in the workplace is also coming up. And the inclusion is another topic that is very, very important when we talk about organizational behavior. Another thing that is very, very prevalent these days, because we see a lot of stress in the organizations these days. So to overcome that problem, a lot of mindful and well-being activities are now being organized by the organization. Also, we see that organizations have started analyzing the data related to the people, which is a data-driven HR practice. Right? So companies these days have started using these surveys, have started doing the analysis to measure the employee happiness so that they can reduce the turnover of the organization. Of course, how can we forget talking about artificial intelligence in organizational behavior? These days we see that AI is changing the OB, and we have started seeing that there is an automation routine task that has come up. Companies have started using predictive analytics for hiring and performance reviews, this AI in HR decision making, predictive analytics for performance as well, then supporting virtual collaborations, detecting burnouts or disengagements using the behavior patterns have also been done with the help of AI. And this is actually nothing but is the future of organization behavior. Let's now move on to the last part of this unit, which is the summary, which talks about whatever we have learned in this entire session. So to summarize Unit 5, this teaches us how organizations change, how people resist to those changes, and how managers overcome that resistance. We learned about organizational development, leadership during the change, power, politics, work culture, and new trends like emotional intelligence and people analytics. This chapter actually strengthens our understanding of modern workplace behavior. Now look at some of the questions that have been coming in the previous years from this unit. For example, what is organizational change? Explain OD and its intervention. Why do employees resist change? A very common question. Describe Levin's change model. Then what is organizational culture and what are its levels? Explain power and politics with examples. Again, a very common question. What is QWL and how it can be improved? And some of the questions can come in the short notes form. Maybe write a short note on recent advances in OB. Thank you so much for learning with BBA Simplified by Dr. Vinky Sharma. The next video will be coming up on the marathon on managerial economics. Do like, share and subscribe for more marathon classes. Thank you so much for watching.